Welcome to the Love Lab Podcast, the place to be for honest and real talk about relationships and sex. Whether you're a man or woman, single or a couple, this is the show for you. I am your host, Kevin Anthony, and I am here to help you have the relationship of your dreams and the best sex of your life. Welcome back to the Love Lab Podcast. This is episode 347, and it is titled, Why Women Are Outgrowing Their Relationships and How Men Can Rise to Meet Them. I was intrigued by this idea when I first spoke to today's guest, because I was really curious what his take on this was. Obviously, working with men and women, I have my own ideas of where I think people are at and what's sort of happening in the general population, at least the population that I work with. But I'm really curious to hear his perspective on what's happening out there. So we're going to be talking about, and I'm going to have the guest explain much deeper about this, but when we say outgrowing their relationships, what we're really going to be talking about is people's own development, their spiritual development, their personal development, where they're at, and then how that's affecting their relationship. Because one thing that tends to happen is that a person in a relationship starts, for whatever reason, they pop awake and they decide it's time to do some personal development work, and they start growing and changing while their partner stays the same. And that can cause a lot of challenges in relationships. And so we're going to talk about that whole dynamic. What happens when that happens? How do we shift that? What are some of the problems? What are some of the benefits? All that kind of stuff. That's what we're going to get into today. And I'm kind of excited because I'm really curious to hear more about the guest's perspective on this. But before we get there, short break for a word from my sponsor, Power and Mastery 3.0. Power and Mastery 3.0 is the latest version of the popular men's sexual mastery course. If you are struggling with erectile dysfunction, premature ejaculation, or simply want to increase your skills in the bedroom, then Power and Mastery is for you. Join the exclusive club of men who have taken their sexual performance into their own hands and become sexual masters. Mastering your sexuality is a key component to becoming the man she has always dreamt of and craves. Don't leave your sexual performance up to chance or the throw of the dice. Become a sexual master today by going to powerandmastery.com and joining the exclusive club of men who have taken their destiny into their own hands. It's powerandmastery.com. Okay, my guest today is Scott Woehrer. He was the publisher and editor-in-chief of Radiance Magazine, a Southern California metaphysical magazine that allowed him to interview hundreds of spiritual luminaries between 2017 and 2023. He also led a men's group for the last 10 years, and he's been in his own divine union relationship with a female shaman and twin flames whisperer. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm glad to be here.
Okay, so I gave a little bit of an intro about what we're going to talk about here, but we got to start at the very beginning. So when we say women are outgrowing their relationships, what do we really mean by that? What are we talking about here?
Sure. And some of them are, and some of them aren't. So obviously the ears will prick up of those who are in that situation. And women already start ahead of men in a sense by having just more emotional intelligence. They got their heart engaged with a lot of their decision making and thinking with their mind, whereas men tend to stay up in their head, intellectualizing, being mental about a lot of things. And definitely a goal of both men and women is to unite the masculine and feminine within each of them. So I have the feminine and the masculine inside me. The feminine is my more nurturing side, where nurturing is called upon for me, but the masculine is there for everything else, for the more aggressive things, protection, and that sort of thing. So women have more emotional intelligence. They love to get together in groups to be with each other because they know there's things they can exchange with each other on a certain level that is a little more easy than with their male mate many times. And that's why I recommend in the book for men to get together in groups as well, to have a place where no one's judging you, There's a loneliness epidemic out there, and a lot of men just stop making friends after a certain age. We get to a certain age and we don't have any, let alone a male friend you can say "I love you" to. That's another challenge I put in the book. If you don't have a friend, a male friend, that you can say "I love you" to, then you got some work to do, because being connected to community, being connected to other men, say in a monthly men's group or even weekly if you can do it, where men share what's working for them or what they could use support in that they're challenged by. It's a wonderful thing. It's a good thing for the world to get men together talking in that way and learning maybe to express themselves before they get the heart attack, before they get cancer and that sort of thing, because they've been suppressing things since childhood. And one of the things men frequently suppress, and it hurts their relationship, is their reason for being here, their gift. Most men lead lives of quiet desperation, is a famous quote, right? And a lot of men are out there in a job, in a relationship, in a situation, with children or without, that they hate. They do not like. They're stressed. They have to drink a lot when they come home or smoke a lot when they come home to relax, because they're stressed, because they hate it, because they're not supposed to be there. So one of the things men need to do for the planet, for their relationship, and for themselves, the relationship with themselves, find out why you're here and do that thing. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to quit your job when you got to pay a mortgage, okay? The universe will conspire with you to move in that direction if you claim it for yourself, if you have the worthiness that you're worth doing what you were meant to do. And if it's playing guitar, but you're not great at it yet, fine, move in that direction. The universe will conspire with you and will help you with the kids, with the other things. And
So
if
let's
years from now, if the universe moves you in that direction and you're playing gigs and that's how you can make a living, then great.
So let's slow down
So,
a minute here, because
oh yeah,
we got a lot of time to talk about all this, and I want to kind of move back to some of the earlier things that you said.
you bet.
So what I really wanted to establish first in this interview was what the difference is, between men and women as far as this personal
Okay,
development. So let's start there, which
sure.
is, you were kind of talking about the fact that women in general tend to be more connected to their heart and their emotions than men.
Yes,
So that was kind of the first
you're
major
right.
statement that you made. And I would say, yes, that is true. And that is because women by nature are emotional beings. They're far
Yeah.
more ruled by their emotions. So it's easy for them to access emotions because they live in their emotions 24/7.
Yes.
Whereas men definitely do not. and we have,
Right.
of course, all of society's pressures to not be emotional as men,
Yep.
right? So we're told to, we shouldn't show our emotions. We should just, suck it up. You use the phrase living in quiet desperation, which of course immediately brings into my mind lyrics from the Pink Floyd song, hanging on in quiet desperation is the English way,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
So, I mean, that song was written decades ago, so this is not a new phenomenon. Uh, but yeah, that idea that women tend to be more in touch with their emotions to begin with. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think for women, it's easier for them to go out and not just be in those emotions, but sort of recognize that there are emotions and kind of work with them, whereas men struggle with them more. So it's correct that if you want to be an integrated masculine man, which is the term that I use, you want to have those classically masculine traits, but you also want to do some work to get into your emotions, right? And understand that you have them, let them flow so you're not bottling them up, because as you correctly said, they can manifest in a heart attack or cancer or some other thing like that. And that is a place where potentially men's groups are really a good idea. It's really interesting because when doing this work, right, you'll often hear people say like, well, men need to get in touch with their emotions. They need to share their emotions more. And then men will hear this, right? And then they'll go home and they'll dump it all on their wives or their girlfriends or whatever. And they'll get vulnerable and they'll share about all the things that, they're worried about in life. And I'm not sure if I can pay the mortgage. And I don't know about this and I don't know about that. And it doesn't have the effect of solving the problems in their relationship that they were told that it has. Because there's nothing wrong with, like, when women say they want you to share your emotions, what they really want you to share is, honey, I love you. You're amazing. You make my life better in every way, right? You know, they want to hear that you have these emotions, especially as they pertain to her in the relationship and that sort of thing. What she doesn't want is to have you dump all your insecurities and emotional, baggage and stuff on
That's
her.
right. Absolutely. Trauma dumping is common. And I remember I used to feel, well, isn't that what a relationship is for? You can just tell them everything. But the fact is that's too much. And that's why when you feel the need to do that, talk therapy is a wonderful thing, because they're paid to listen to you just dump and dump and dump. And then they'll reorganize them and serve them back to you, reflect them back to you in a helpful way that could help from the first session if you found a good one. So, absolutely. And here's another thing. I'd go a step further and say this. A lot of times your partner is dealing with their own stuff, and they don't want to get entangled in your stuff. Now, that doesn't mean they don't want to hear the general outline of what's going on with you. But, Ram Dass tells this story. I've seen this video online where he says a woman came up to me and just vented to me this whole thing about her daughter and this whole family drama situation. And when she's done, I said, I hear you. And she didn't like that. That wasn't enough. So she ended up telling the story from the beginning all over again, feeling like, I don't think he heard me, because his reaction was not one of jumping into my drama with me, which you don't want to do. That's like someone's in quicksand and you jump into quicksand to rescue them. Better to tie a rope around a tree and toss it to them. You have empathy instead of sympathy. Sympathy is when it's, oh my gosh, oh my, and then we're in a codependent situation right there. Then we're babying them, mothering them, fathering them, whatever it is. And that is not going to let them heal from that point. So what Ram Dass was doing, and others can do, is simply hold space. Holding space is a little more than even active listening. Okay, listening is a beautiful gift you can give somebody, right? Really listening. But holding space for someone is allowing, without any energy of judgment. Okay, you really cannot judge them even 1%, and allowing them to express themselves in the way that they need to, any way that they need to in that moment. And it's wonderful when this happens. And so what is optimal in a relationship is, and I'll do this, I'll be like, oh, I got angry, or something ticked me off, or I got sad about something. Even better if I can self-regulate, self-soothe, and heal myself, and bring that conversation to my partner. So she doesn't need to do anything. She doesn't need to get all codependent and go, oh, tell them, that sounds, that's codependent. So I had to learn to do this because I was used to dumping. I thought that was a good thing, or listening to somebody else dump. I thought that was, wow, I'm really helping them because I really feel the emotions of this. And well, you just dropped both your energy, and you're not helping them, because everyone is on their divine path. We can't fix anybody, and men in particular tend to think we can, but they are on their own divine path. And the best place for us to be in is at the highest level, is allowing them to resolve that on their own. Because if you just tell them what to do, that's not teaching. That's not, you can have empathy for someone, and what would love do now, and help that person. But usually a lot of times love, some people call it tough love, but real love is whatever the situation calls for. Does the situation call for you jumping in the quicksand with this person, or toss them a rope? So that may alleviate some guilt you have of not helping someone that you normally would have helped in that sympathy way, by just reminding yourself they're on a divine path. Who are you to interrupt it?
Yeah. Well, you hit on another great spiritual truth that I think a lot of people don't really get. But like, if you spend enough time studying the great spiritual traditions, eventually you'll get what they're trying to tell you. And when you do, the natural reaction that you have is to go, why didn't they just say that to begin with? Because it's
Yeah.
all veiled, right? It's all veiled, but it's
Yes.
veiled on purpose. And the reason is for exactly what you just said. If they
Mm,
had just come out on page one of that spiritual book and told you
yeah.
the truth, you
Yeah.
wouldn't get it. You wouldn't believe it. You had to go through your own journey and your own
That's right.
process to get there and to understand it, right? So it's very
Yes.
similar when it comes to what's happening here in relationships. You can't just tell your partner, here's what you need to do. Just do
Right.
what I tell you to do, right?
Right.
They do have to go on their own journey. But this leads me to sort of the premise of this episode here, which is that, and I created the title, but it was based off the conversation you and I had. But it's this premise that women are embarking on these journeys lately more so than men. And
Yes.
I'm curious, like, is that really something that you see? Do you see more women going on these personal development journeys, reading the books, going to the workshops, doing the whatever, and less men? Is that actually something that you see out there?
I do. I mean, we'll just look at politics, and we're relationships, and what there's no real great male role models for divine union relationship. There's the tech bros, and people doing things without fear of consequences, whether it's how you date people, whether you cheat, you lie, or whether you're selling investments that you know aren't good investments for the people getting them, but as long as you get yours, it's okay. That's what's spoken out there, not to mention the other gender issues that are out there. So to come back and celebrate the masculine, and I say the divine masculine to differentiate it from toxic masculine, but it's sort of like with love. People say unconditional love. Love is already unconditional, but we say it to help ourselves along a little bit, to remind ourselves that love does indeed have no conditions and at its purest. Um,
So yeah, basically, I was just curious if that was something that you've seen
I
out there, that
do.
women are
I mean,
embarking
it's
more. Which
the fall. I mean, the rise of the feminine in spiritual circles is very well known. The age of Aquarius, patriarchy has had the last 2,000 years, and we need a rebalancing. Which is obvious. It plays out on the world stage of unregulated male egos and such. So
so the next
we.
question becomes then, why do you think that's happening? Why do you think there
Hmm,
is a surge of women who are
sure.
embarking on these spiritual and personal growth journeys
Well,
where the men aren't starting or aren't coming along to the same extent?
the planet itself is conscious, and you call her Gaia, and there's a feminine energy there, and it's just. I mean, if you think of the Earth as a conscious essence as well as the sun, there are movements, there are energetic patterns, energetic weather, if you will. And it's time for the feminine. And I think we can all feel it. We can just look outside and see how much lack of empathy and lack of compassion is actually celebrated in some corners of the national conversation out there, which is a capitalism extreme taken to an extreme, right? It's as opposed to conscious capitalism that actually thinks about people and looks out for people the way it used to do in the 50s and 60s more often, where CEOs of companies actually prided themselves on being good citizens of the planet and the country, only took salaries that are about 7 times the amount of their lowest paid employee, paid high taxes for all the services, and that was the greatest time. America keeps saying they want to get back to that, except they don't want to do all the little things
Well,
that it would take to get to.
that's a really deep conversation as to why that shifted. But my personal opinion, just to say it in one sentence, is it's the
Okay,
absolute result of the moral breakdown of society.
sure.
That is what has allowed them to do those things. Because
The
when
pendulum swing.
yeah, but when you dissociate, so why would somebody be concerned about being a good moral person or being good for the country or being a good
That's right.
CEO? Why would they do that? Because they have morals, because they believe in something bigger. They believe in, maybe it's patriotism towards a country.
They're
Maybe
more
it's
tapped into their soul, I believe.
maybe, well, potentially, yeah. But so there's been a concerted effort over many decades to break down that moral fabric. And once you do that,
Yeah,
right, now there's no rules. Now we can do anything we want. So
yeah,
you see a rise in, say, something like atheism, right? Well, if there is nothing else, right, then what does it matter what I do here, right? You'll
right.
see there's been a huge rise in literally the satanic religion, right? I mean, they just did a big demonstration, black mass ceremony at this on a state capitol in this country, right? So when you break down the moral fabric and you say there are no rules, you can do whatever you want, and there's no moral consequences, there's no spiritual consequences, then you get that
Well, see,
extreme.
so, and this is what we've created. It's up to us. We did this. We put our kids in front of screens and let their childhood disappear on screens, and now they don't know how to have a relationship with a member of the opposite sex. They can't talk to them because they've been behind these screens. We've disassociated ourselves in our society. There's no conversation for caring. I mean, look at the homeless problem in the country. Look at the uh, what is it? The insecure as far as eating, appetite, the food insecure people out there. It's incredible. And for those Christians, I mean, Jesus said, feed them and clothe them. And there are churches out there who do. In fact, churches, for whatever people want to say against them, they are some of the biggest charities and charitable causes out there. But we need more. We need a conversation for it. We don't need, the Pope and our vice president fighting in the open. I mean, it's what's going on.
Well, I don't want to
And
go
you
too
talk
far.
about basic decency, these basic virtues we've sort of let go, and we don't treasure them. We treasure domination, making money. So let's call it out.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far down the political realms, because that's not really
Neither do
what
I.
this show is about.
Oh
But
no,
it is something that factors into this, so it's okay to
it's
talk
a part of
about
the
it.
social fabric.
Exactly. Um, I wanted to come back to something that you said about, well, it's sort of time for the feminine, because this is something I actually hear out in the social narrative quite a lot. And I'm curious
What's
what
that?
you mean by that. Like, it's time for the feminine, right? Because,
Okay.
well, I'll let you answer that, and then I'll tell you my view on it.
Well, first of all, men need to heal the feminine inside them. We talk about having a wounded inner child. Well, frequently it can be more helpful with either a talk therapist or a holistic healer to distinguish the feminine and the masculine inside of each of us and determine which one is wounded. I was on a podcast the other day, and the woman talked about, well, what about when the woman, she's upset about having to do all the laundry and all the housework, and they both work full time. I say, I agree. Well, in many of these cases, or the woman's earning more money, or she's supporting him, and he's being irresponsible. Well, that's a guy with a wounded masculine, where he's letting his feminine be the only thing that comes out, and she has to bring out more of her masculine to fill in the gaps, to pay the bills or do whatever. So the sooner men can acknowledge, whether they want to acknowledge they have an inner feminine or just that they have feelings, and they have, so this is where what women are waiting for men. They're waiting for them to fix themselves, in a sense, to get in alignment with their heart and soul, their heart, mind, and soul. Most of us are not. Most of us don't know what we're supposed to be doing for a living. We don't know why we're here because we haven't found that, because we listen to well-meaning parents who led us down a different track. And no, you can't make a living as a musician, writer, artist, whatever it is. And it's not that we don't need our plumbers and construction people. We do. But if you have a passion for something that you're suppressing and denying, bring it out. Go to amateur nights. Get the joy of it out of you. You don't have to be Katy Perry or whoever to, up there at that level to be called a success. You're a
Yeah,
success if you're doing what you love. So
I
let's all check our definitions of success. Frequently, we have an unconscious one in our head that we're actually leaning into that we don't realize we are. That is not a healthy definition. We don't think if we have a certain amount of money in our bank account, we're not a success. Please
So
find out what you're meant to do here
we're going to
and
take a
do that
break in just
thing.
a moment. And when we do,
Yeah.
I really want to come back and focus on what men can do, right? How they can
Yeah.
get back on track. So we're going to dive into each one of those things a lot deeper.
Cool.
What I really wanted to try to get across in this first segment is that there is a bit of a difference that we're seeing, right? That maybe men are lagging behind a little bit in their spiritual development. We'll kind of
And
wanted
that's
to talk
okay.
about some of the reasons for that, and then of
Okay.
course get into how they can sort of up their game, so to speak. And I asked you
Yeah.
that question about you know what does it mean when you say it's time for the feminine or time for women, that sort of thing, because you mentioned the pendulum before, right? How we as humanity, we constantly swinging from one end of one extreme to the other. We've constantly
Right.
got that pendulum swing. So one of the things that I've been seeing these days is that when this conversation comes up about it's time for the feminine, you're hearing it come from the feminist, and it's like, smash the patriarchy, women need to be in charge, there should be no men in government. Like they completely go the opposite extreme,
Some do.
right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to make sure that the audience understood that that is not what we are saying here. What we actually want here is we want both men and women to rise up equally, to be the
Yes.
best version of themselves,
Yeah.
right? And to be, if you're a woman, to be the best feminine version of yourself. If you're a man, the best masculine version of yourself, meaning that we're not trying to be one or the other. If I'm a woman, I'm not trying to force myself to be, because this is something you see all the time. And I've been seeing it since the 80s when women started getting seriously into the workforce. It was like, I got to
Yeah.
put the pantsuit on. I got to wear the shoulder pads. I got to cut my hair short so I look like a man. Then I need to go in there and compete like a man and be a bitch like a man and do all of that, right?
Right.
That worked at that time for a certain goal, but that's not ultimately what is going to make women happy or what is going to restore balance. And I tell people all the time that, women will approach things differently, but it's not any less powerful. Right. So I use my listeners have heard this a million times. I use martial arts analogies because I'm a martial artist myself.
Okay.
But I'll say, like the masculine way is art that's more like Muay Thai, right? Which is Thai kickboxing, which is just all about power and just using bones to hurt people, right? Whereas Aikido is all about taking the attacker's energy and just redirecting it where you want it
Yep.
to go. And so they're just a beautiful example of masculine versus more feminine energies. Just because a woman doesn't show up and is like, here's what's going to happen and you're going to do this, blah, 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 and like get all aggro and masculine, doesn't mean that she isn't powerful. In fact, I
Right.
sometimes think it's more powerful to come in from your feminine and suddenly just get everybody doing everything that you want them to do without ever having to do anything, without ever having to raise your voice, without ever having to force somebody. That is power, right? So anyway, the idea that we want to rise both of them up to be beautiful equals that are both contributing to society. That's what we're really talking about. So
But
we
that
don't want
power,
to shift to the other end of the spectrum.
that power you're talking about to move through with ease, that comes from knowing who you are. And how you do that is you meditate. Okay. To find, if you don't know who you are, what you're supposed to do here, maybe you got some inklings, some ideas, meditate 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening if you can. And, they say, I don't have time to do that. Those people need to meditate for an hour. The old joke. You don't have time for 20 minutes, then you need an hour. So 20 minutes though is great. And to still your mind, to follow your breath, is a beautiful way to do it. It makes my whole day better when I do this for 20 minutes. I even set the timer on my phone because it feels like such a long time. I'm like, is that 20 minutes up yet? It feels like an hour. But it helps. And there's many meditation techniques. People can go to YouTube and type in guided meditation, and thousands of them will come up. And they're all adventures that take you into a forest, that have you meet your inner child, that have you meet your spirit guides, that help you alleviate anxiety of the moment, all kinds of things.
Yeah, I am a big fan of meditation. I've actually been meditating since I was in college in the early 90s. So, yeah, I've been through a lot of different iterations of that. But before
Yeah.
we get into, the things that uh, men can do to step up their game and become better versions of themselves. Let me just take a quick break
Okay.
for a second sponsor ad, and then when I come back, let's dive into things a little deeper, like meditation and personal work, spiritual work, men's
Journaling,
group
sure.
work, all that kind of stuff. Because I like to leave people with things that they can actually do. Like, oh, I just listened to that. I just wrote down a list of like 3 things I could change today, right? So
I
let's
love it.
do that when we come back. Okay, men, are you tired of falling short in the bedroom and in your relationship? Do you want your woman to respect you and crave you? Do you want to be the man she secretly brags about to all her friends? What if you could become this man? What if you could not only master your masculine sexuality, but also be the dream man who shows up for his woman in all the ways she desires? What if you could become so irresistible that she becomes addicted to you? If you're ready to become that man, then go to kevinanthonycoaching.com/men. That's kevinanthonycoaching.com/men. That is obviously an ad for my men's coaching program. That's where we get to work on all of this stuff. As Scott was saying earlier, this is where you can come and share your insecurities, and we can talk about it and figure out how to get you back on track without dumping it all over your woman, right? We can teach you how to embody the classically masculine traits that are great that the world needs, while also learning how to be a more sensitive partner, and to allow your emotions to move through so they're not getting stuck. We get to work on all of that stuff. That's kevinanthonycoaching.com/men. Okay. So we've talked a lot about, and we kind of set the premise of, women seem to be doing more interpersonal work. They seem to be doing more. They seem to be rising up a bit more these days. And I will say that from my experience, and I will admit it might be slightly skewed, but I do a lot of group women's coaching these days. And so I'm working with a lot of women. And when they come to me, I'm not going to say that they're all doing great and it's always the man's problem, because that is definitely not the case. But I do see a significant number of women that when they come to me and they describe the dynamic that's happening in their relationship, that it seems that even though they don't have all the tools and they don't have all the skills either, that they are trying harder than their partners are. That's what I
Sure.
see. I see that they're trying harder. They're there in the group because they know they don't have it figured out, right? And they're trying to figure it out and they're open to coaching. And when I ask them about their man, I'll often just get, no, he won't do that. Or no, he would never go see somebody. Or no, he's not going to do that, right? So what I see, and I get it might be skewed because I'm not doing men's group work currently at the moment, although I am working individually with them. But I see a lot of that, and so that's one of the things that uh, got me interested in wanting to have this discussion, because I'm like, okay, I see that. I'm curious what you see,
Yeah.
and we kind of hashed that out, right? So then the question becomes, what can men do? How can men start to, step it up a little bit? What can they do? You've mentioned a few things, but please talk more about it now.
They can look at their addictions. So let's confront that. So a lot of, I suggest that to be a great lover, to be a great partner, a king to your queen, you need to get things out of the way that are in the way of real intimacy. And those things frequently are addictions. Now, whether you're, and you know what they are in your life. You probably, if you're smoking too much pot in the evening, if you're taking too much cannabis, you're drinking too much, to excess a lot. You have a pornography addiction. You have a gaming addiction. You, do online gambling and spend the household money on various things online, and we all know what they all are. Uh, Need to get a grip on that now. This is called accountability. Accountability is a word I never used to like, as well as responsibility, because they sounded oppressive. It sounded like, oh, I ain't going to have any fun. Well, the fact is, accountability takes into account my life. It means I'm in control. It means I know what I'm doing. It means I'm not out of control. I'm not a slave to an addiction. And if you want to be saying those things, let me tell you, it's a much easier life to not have them. You'll want to focus on that. Now, whether that's through meditation, I recommend a formula of meditation, journaling, and getting coaching, particularly from a holistic coach, someone who takes into account mind, body, and spirit, like you do. uh, you know, and take care of yourself, get exercise, get out into nature, but find out who you are, find out what's got a hold of you, what is controlling you, and don't you want to be free? Don't you want to be free of all of that? I have a big section in the book, Good Morning, My Queen, about that, and I had to confront it myself, and I tell my story about that.
Yeah, so that's
Um,
great advice. Step one is you really do need to get a hold of, you could call it your shadow side, you could call
your
it your
demons,
addictions, your demons, whatever terminology you want to use for
sure,
that. But because you're right, those things are 100% holding you back in your development. They are absolutely preventing you from being the best version of yourself that you can be.
yes,
So, but to do that, you got to get real honest. You got to
yep,
get real honest with yourself,
or
and
real
you've got
curious.
curious first and then honest, because the thing is you might see stuff along that journey and then you're just like, no, that's not really that I'm not really doing that, that's not really
Yeah,
happening, right? So you get in that denial phase. So yes,
yes.
number one, you got to get curious enough to look, and then you got to get really honest about what it is that you find when you look. And
Well, like curious and honest, like if I gave up X, Y, and Z, I probably would have a much better month, more clear mornings, feel more powerful and empowered in my life. I'm pretty sure that would be the case if I gave up X, Y, and Z, but I'm not going to do it right now for because I'm addicted or I need that dopamine hit.
I
And
can
it's
tell
like,
you,
man,
man, I have a good friend that I have known for over 20 years, and he's an
yeah,
amazing guy, and he's super smart. He really is, which is part of the problem. But he drinks too much, right? And
yeah,
but he knows this, and so once a year, every year, generally at the beginning of the year, he'll go on a 30-day fast. He won't drink at all, right?
okay,
And every single year, he'll tell me, man, it's amazing. I stopped drinking for the month and my bench press has gone up and I have so much more energy and I'm getting
yeah.
more stuff done. And every year I say to him, man, wouldn't it be great if you could do that all year long? And every year he goes back to the same habit again. It's this, we have this conversation year after year after year.
Yeah, so he does like a sober January or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
But so the reason I bring that example up is because, even if you recognize that you have these demons or these, issues or these challenges, these addictions,
Yeah.
and even if you occasionally take steps to do something about it, it
Right.
doesn't mean that you're really making the life change that you need to
Well,
make,
it sounds
right?
like he's created a story that says as long as I give myself a month off, I get to abuse it for the other 11 months of the year. So that's a
Basically.
story he's created in his head. And yeah, he'll learn before long that that's not tenable.
Right. And then, and that's why I say you got to get real honest with yourself, right? You got to look at
Yeah.
it and go, okay, all right,
Radically honest.
what's really happening here? How is it really affecting me? How could life really be better if I changed the way I do things? So I completely agree. I think, get curious, really look at this stuff, be really honest about what you find. And here's the thing I tell men all the time: if you
Hmm.
find stuff you don't like, right? You confront the shadows and you're like, oh God, I can't even believe I do that. I'm ashamed of it, is often a word you'll hear.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself up.
Right.
That
It's
accomplishes
human.
nothing, right?
Totally human.
Exactly. And everybody has their areas or their issues where they, need to do more work. So don't waste any energy on, feeling guilty or shameful or beating yourself
Yeah.
up. Just start to take action now to change it. That's all you have to do, right? Now, you talked about some ways they can start to take action. So talk about different ways that men can start to take action to, change their patterns and their
Well,
behaviors.
if starting your own group sounds a little ambitious, but I'd recommend it in your living room or we do it in a local metaphysical store because they're very positive about good energy and want to help the world in that way, help men gather. And but start a journal. There's something that happens with your life when you write down your thoughts on a piece of paper. Writers already know about this, but people who don't normally journal, it just helps you see your stuff. You're like, oh my gosh, I wrote that. It matters. It matters. And by the way, you're worth spending the time. If you say, oh, it's a waste of time, I got other things I should be doing. and people say that instead of meditation a lot. Actually, there is almost no other important thing you could be doing than taking care of yourself, because then that self goes out into the world. And if you go out into the world without your morning meditation and you kind of got some angry, energetic residue from your dreams from the night, some unconscious programming coming online for you right now because you didn't do anything to stop it. It's just this gunk. Um, meditate, meditate. That is so key. And have the conversation with yourself that it's a thing you should do for yourself. It's called a self-love conversation. Men aren't used to hearing that or being suggested that. But man, if you don't love yourself, nobody will. And nobody's going to love yourself like you, not even your partner, not even your kids, your parents. You have to take control
That
and finally
reminds
do that.
me.
It's one of the things the women in our life are waiting for us. They're waiting for their men because they want to trust them. You say, oh, like, they want protection. Well, I'm going to protect her when we're out. She wants protection from you too, that you're not going to lose your temper over stuff you haven't resolved in childhood yet, but they hope that you are working it out and you're not going to take this into your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, having the same argument because you haven't hugged that 7-year-old wounded child in you and healed that time that you got abandoned, felt unloved, got abused, or whatever it was, whatever you need to surrender and let go so that you can have a happier life as an adult.
Yeah, you're right. That's absolutely. So I did an entire episode on this show a while back
Mm,
about basically safety. That wasn't in the title of the episode. It wasn't like here's what women are looking for as far as safety. But the gist of that entire episode was that women are looking for safety and what that actually means to them. Because
yeah,
when you actually say to a man, well, she needs to feel safe with you, the first thing you usually get was, of course she knows I would never hit her. Right. Like,
right.
okay, that's level one, but there's a
Yeah,
whole bunch of other levels of what it
that's
means to feel
true.
safe in a relationship. And one of which is what you just talked about. She needs to feel safe that she can trust you, that you're not going to blow up at her because of some unresolved trauma that you have, right? She
Yep.
needs to feel
Yep.
safe that she can trust you. So that is for sure a big part of the development that we as men need to work on. We need to heal those traumas, resolve that stuff so that we're not
Yes.
flying off the handle at stupid stuff and,
Yeah.
making her feel unsafe in the relationship. I agree
Or
with
being
you.
lazy about stuff, being neglectful of your part of the relationship, and that can include many things. It can mean making sure you got date nights, making sure you're raking up the leaves, taking out the garbage, whatever it is, washing the dishes. You know,
Absolutely.
yeah.
One of the things I'm appreciating about our conversation today is
Hmm.
you and I, we use kind of different words. We have slightly
Hmm.
different perspectives, but the message underneath it is exactly the same, right? So as I'm listening to you describe, things like everything that you just said right now, it's exactly what
Yeah.
I tell men they need to do all the time, right? The
Well,
underlying message is the same. And the reason why I think this is so important is because people that listen to me regularly, they know where I'm coming from, right? They
yeah.
know what my points of view are. And so it can be really easy to say, well, that's just what Kevin thinks. And because Kevin, they can put me in a box and say Kevin has this belief structure, and so therefore that's where this all comes from. But
That's
I
right.
love to have somebody like yourself on the show whose background is different from mine, who comes from a little bit different perspective. And yet the underlying message underneath what you are sharing is exactly the same as what I share on a regular basis. And I hope that people
I can
can
tell.
see that and get that, right? And see
Yeah.
that this is sort of like I like to use the term, it's like a universal truth, right? It
Yes,
doesn't matter
absolutely.
what your background is. You could come from a very deep, sort of a little bit more on the new age spirituality side, or you can
Right.
come from, another
Psychology.
perspective. So, yeah, but the underlying truth is still there regardless.
People like Carl Jung and Nietzsche were quite spiritual by today's standards. I mean, Carl Jung came up with the collective unconscious, synchronicities. I mean, come on, that's the basis. Spirituality 101 these days. Um, but I think the main message of my book is infused in the way I told it, and that is there's fun here to be had, guys. We're leaving a lot on the table when we don't step up, when we feel intimidated. I can't be a king. Yes, you can. Just by your birthright. It is your birthright. And all you have to do is step into yourself. No one can do it for you. No one can slay your dragons for you. I had to slay my own. I still have to slay my own. And welcome it, embrace it, because it takes you up a notch. It takes you up a level for each dragon you slay, I say in quotes. And those are your issues. Those
Yeah.
are your internal traumas, whatever they are. Any insecurities that come up, man, get on it. Even if you have to, go to the self-help section of a bookstore, listen to the spiritual talks online, my phone. Anytime I go to Instagram or anything, it's you know Dalai Lama, it's Ram Dass. These spiritual people giving me constant messages throughout the day that infuse my life.
Yeah, it's Joseph Campbell's The Hero's
Oh yeah,
Journey, right? I
yep,
mean,
that's
that's what
right.
it is. Each of us has our own hero's journey that we need to
That's right.
embark on. And if we successfully complete that journey, we become a better version of ourselves, right? Which not only improves ourselves, it improves our relationship, it improves the world in general. And
Yeah.
a silly comment, just to add to that, you were
Okay.
talking about being a king, right?
Yeah.
And to quote somebody else, Mel Brooks, it's good to be the
It's
king.
good to be the king.
Who wouldn't want to be the king? Now, of course, you got to be the right kind of king, right?
That's right.
You got to
That's
be
right.
the benevolent king, right? Not,
Yes.
not the
Yes.
asshole dictator king.
No. No. And the thing is, there's so much fun and deliciousness to get out of a relationship, particularly with you say to your partner, you know what? I know we've normalized pornography and everything, but it's kind of weird to be looking at other people when we have each other. So I'd like to just move that out of our relationship and lead us to a place where intimacy is between us, just the two of us. And I guarantee your lovemaking will go through the roof at that point, because what you focus on expands, and you focus on her more, and you give her all your sensual energy that is meant for the relationship, and it isn't leaking out anywhere else in inappropriate relationships with other people or inappropriate looking at on the internet. Check yourself, man. Get a hold of yourself. And if you find yourself scrolling through things you shouldn't, resolve to get to the bottom of it. I'm not saying you're wrong. No one's judging you. And that's what a lot of people would be saying. I'm going to do what I want. That's okay. There's not even any judgment. I would suggest there is another way, a way that is more full and more embracing and devotional of your divine partner. And that is to give it all to her. Let me tell you, that will shift things. That is a shift you can make that she will feel. And a lot of times our women are shifting ahead of us, if you will, if you want to look at it linearly. But you could look at also as they're getting more into the deeper rings of themselves. Okay. And we're still sort of on the surface. We haven't resolved our conflicts with our father, our mother wound, which a lot of men have and they don't admit to. Get rid of the shame. Just go in, get it healed, whether you see a therapist, a coach, whatever, and get curious and get a hold of it,
You
because
just
you
brought up
don't want to get to
another
your deathbed and just go, oh, I should have done this and that. You're on your deathbed already.
For sure. You just brought up another point that is really important and one that I talk about a lot.
Huh.
Basically, what you were saying is you have to give everything to her. Now, that's in the context of,
Yeah.
lovemaking, but it's also in the context of your dedication and devotion to the relationship itself, right? You got to
Yes.
give everything to it. And this sometimes is a hard sell for men, right? I've worked with a lot of men because traditionally for years, I worked with primarily only men before I was shifting into couples and now working with a lot of
Sure.
women. So this has traditionally been a hard sell. And I use
Mm.
another analogy to describe this. I have seen, being an entrepreneur myself and having been in entrepreneurial circles, I've seen people say a lot of times in the entrepreneur, these are always people that are just starting out, by the way. They will always say, I don't want to put a lot of time and money into my business until it starts making some money, right? To which the rest of us always laugh and say, it's never going to make any money until you put the time and the money into it, right? In other
Right.
words, you got to put in first before you can get anything out of it. And it's the
Sure.
same thing with your relationship. I tell men all the time, okay, you're telling me you don't want to invest 100% in this. You don't want to give your all to this because the relationship isn't where you want it to be. But don't you realize it's not where you want it to be because you're not giving your all to it? And let's take that
Right.
even a step further and say, Women have this amazing ability to multiply anything you give them, right? So we have, oh, you give a woman a house, she makes it a home. You give a
That's
woman your
right.
seed, she turns it into a child. Like whatever you give her,
Yeah.
the scraps of the groceries, somehow she'll make an amazing meal out of it. They multiply the things that you give them. If you give them your all in the relationship, she will
Yes.
multiply it. And what will come back to you will absolutely be more than you put into it, right? But you got to be willing to do it. Now, sometimes men will do that. And then like a couple weeks later, like it's not happening. It's not coming back to me like you said it would. And
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
because she still doesn't trust you because for the last 10 years, you haven't done
That's
it.
right.
Now you've
That's
done
right.
it for 3 weeks and all of a sudden you expect it to shift. Give it time. When she learns that you're consistent enough that she can trust you, it will happen.
Have you heard intimacy? So intimacy being broken down as into me I see.
Mm-hmm.
So the best way to have great intimacy is to have a great intimate relationship with yourself. And if you don't have practice at this, it's a good thing to practice. Become your own best friend. Fall in love with yourself. And you bring that kind of solidness to your relationship, that'll be appreciated. That means you don't need anything from them. Everything they give you is out of their overflow. And the same with you. They don't feel you're sucking energy from them, taking from them like a vampire, an energy vampire. No, you're giving because you're taking care of your own needs. Now, that sounds unromantic. But what this means is she does not complete you and you do not complete her. You complete yourself and then you present yourself as a whole person to the relationship. Now, most of us get into relationships with all that stuff out there, wounded, unhealed stuff out in the open. So it's like, okay, time to get a hold of it. Time to even tell your mate if you can. Look, I know I do X, Y, and Z, and I don't want to. I know that that's codependent and does not grow a relationship. It's unfair to you that I do this to you, that I say this to you. Tell on yourself, okay? Own it, because you can't do anything with it till you own it. And you say, you know what? I had to own at one point in some arguments I got into with my girlfriend that there were some narcissistic tendencies in there. There was some gaslighting in there. I was arguing, and I thought I was sort of arguing against a bully. Um, and I later saw that it was very harmful what I was doing. And why did I lose my crap on this stuff? Why did I lose my shit? And went in and figured it out and healed it because they say whatever you're fighting about's not what you're fighting about. It's always that thing linked to when you were abandoned as a kid. You felt unloved as a kid, and now you think she's abandoning you, or she's not doing something for you or stepping up because you have this unconscious expectation that she needs to do X, Y, and Z, and then you'll be okay. That's the definition of codependency. If anybody needs to do anything for you to make you feel okay, that's a codependent dynamic. And the goal for us as men, as humans, is to heal that in ourselves, give ourselves the love we're looking for outside of ourselves, because there's nothing external to you, no person, no event, no inheritance that is going to feed your soul inside. You do that on your own, privately, on the side, so that when you present yourself out, you are whole and complete. And people like hanging around with you because they can feel you don't want anything from there. You're not pulling from them. They call it hooking people. You're not hooking people. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a better way to live. And like I said, people want to be with you. And that's, because you have homeostasis, right? The body medically wants to be in homeostasis, in that balance. Well, you have a homeostasis of the mind, heart, and spirit. And it's a great place to be. Great place,
Yeah.
great way to conduct yourself through life, being connected.
Yet again, another thing in which we agree, which is just that all the work starts from the inside. It always starts with
Yeah.
yourself, right? I will often have people, they'll schedule a strategy call with me because they're thinking about working with me. And then as we talk through the process a little bit, they'll often say, well, I'm not in a relationship right now. Maybe I should wait until I get in a relationship and then I'll reach out to you again and we can do some
Yeah.
work. To which I'm like, no, now is the time. Do the work now so that you can actually then manifest a good relationship, a healthy relationship, so that you're not making all the mistakes in that relationship and fucking it all up. Do the inner work now.
Well, there's
Get
an
your own
actress
house
out
in
there.
order.
That's right. There's an actress out there named Anna Kendrick. She was in Pitch Perfect, and she's went on the record as saying she will never date another guy who is either not in therapy or has done it. He has to have done it or is in it, and she's not dating him because she realizes there's a lot of people out there with unhealed stuff, and man, it comes out one way or another, and that's what the red flags are.
Well, and you know, again, to get back to something that I said much earlier, which you agreed with, which is don't beat yourself up. Like when we say, you know, deal with your unhealed stuff, it's not a
Yeah.
blame thing. Everybody has unhealed stuff. I don't care how amazing your parents were. They did the best they could do. Even if they were, you know, great parents, they still did stuff that
Yeah.
scarred you, traumatized you, no matter how hard they tried not to. It's just life, right? We've all got
Yeah.
our stuff. Some of it might even be, you know, if you want to get into the metaphysical, trauma that has been passed down from generations. It didn't
Yeah.
come from your parents, right? There's all different things that could be there. We've all got it. Just admit that, figure out what yours is for you, and work on healing it.
You know, there is something men can do right now, and they can think about this. And I love this advice from Bashar, spiritual teacher. He says, um, follow your highest excitement. Always, always follow your highest excitement. Whatever that is your purpose.
Yeah.
And if it leads you to a higher excitement, go off on that. And don't have any attachment to the outcome. You know, don't think you're a musician and you're going to be on and doing a concert in next month. But find out what your highest excitement is. It teaching guitar? Is it playing guitar? Is it building guitars? Follow your highest excitement always and always. That's what you're supposed to be doing here. That is the biggest clue to your purpose.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
you've mentioned
I
that a
love that
few
advice.
times throughout this, and I'm glad that you came back to it because it's a great way to end this segment, which is this
Sure.
idea of, you know, to quote Joseph Campbell again, he said, follow your bliss, right?
That's right.
Which has been misinterpreted 100,000 ways, unfortunately. A lot
Right.
of people take that to mean like, oh, just, you know, follow whatever makes you feel good. I mean, well, drugs and alcohol can potentially make you feel good. That is not what Joseph Campbell meant. What he
Right.
meant is exactly what you're saying, which is that if you can get in touch with the things that really light you up in life and do that, that will help you become a better version of yourself. You will do that
Exactly.
thing better. You know, you mentioned, oh, there's nothing wrong with being a plumber. Some people love being a plumber, right? Some people
Yes.
love what it takes to figure out a complex plumbing issue and
That's
then
right.
do it, but create some, you know, it is a work of art in itself. If you have some
Yeah.
complicated issue and you solved it and you made it work for somebody, right?
Running water is great.
It sure is. But the point is just like whatever that thing is that you do, find something that you love to do, right?
Yeah.
And you know, my listeners know I've talked about this many times. All the different career paths I've had in my life. Why? Because I kept trying to figure out what was the thing that,
Yeah.
you know, you said like, what am I here to do? What is the thing that lights me up? Blah blah blah. I feel fortunate that I finally found it because I
Me
love what
too.
I do now. But it took a long time. I was always envious of people who knew. Like I've known people who are like, they'll say stuff like, ever since I was 10 years old, I knew I wanted to be this. And I've been doing it my whole
Well,
life and I'm a master at it now. You know, I'm like,
how did it change the quality of your life when you finally embraced that?
oh, it changed it dramatically.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even, you know, it doesn't mean that everything gets better. There's still struggles in life,
Sure.
right? You know, I make less money now than I did when I was doing something else that I hated, right? So there
But
might be,
abundance shows up in many ways.
it shows up in many ways, right? But the point is, you know, it doesn't alleviate all struggles in life, but what it does do
Sure.
is when you have those struggles, make them easier to deal with.
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed. You know, when you're whole and complete, when you're grounded, anchored wherever you go, I used to say I was when I was younger, I used to be amazed at people who were very self-possessed. They seemed to know themselves. They always knew what to say, what to do. And I'd look at them in amazement, like, how do you do that? How do you know that? And that's just because through my lineage, I wasn't taught that. I wasn't encouraged. I was encouraged to believe some Catholic beliefs and all that, but and have external things instead of cultivating my inner world. I discovered that later. And that when you can do that, then you always know what to do next. You always know what to say next. When you come from your spirit, your heart, the connection inside, the heart is connected to the soul. And when it fills your heart, it's filling your soul, and you're on the right track to do what you're supposed to do. Don't deny yourself that. Just, give that gift to yourself of doing it on some level. Follow your highest excitement. The universe will help you. The universe will help you pay that mortgage, take care of the kids, whatever your responsibilities are. It's like turning a big ship at sea. It takes a while to turn, but you start turning the wheel and it'll eventually get where you want to go.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
and know
So
that you're worthy of that.
this is the perfect segue into if
Hmm.
people need help on this journey, how can they find you and the work you do in your book and anything else that you have that might be able to help them with this?
Well, the book's on Amazon. It's as an ebook, so you can read it on your phone in 2 seconds. It's on the shorter side. It's a short and punchy book, if you will, but it's simple, but it's not easy, right? They say when you talk about working on your traumas, that takes a little time. That takes a little effort. So you might have the bookmark in the book for a while at that point. If you go off and go get therapy or do your journaling, get into nature, sit under a tree, hug a tree, touch grass, as they say, get your bare feet in the grass. It feels so good. You feel connected, and you'll get to hear that quiet voice of your soul, which isn't as loud as the ego, which is judgmental, saying, hey, rah, 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 this, that, this, that. Meditation helps quiet the ego, never goes away, but just quiets it so that those impressions from your soul can come up and tell you which way your path is going today. It's not somebody else's path. Your path is into unmarked territory, so don't be afraid by that. And don't be afraid that you can't see where the next step is at this moment. Trust. Trust that where you go as your intuition is leading you like a rudder, the intuition is the soul manifestation of the soul guidance, okay? It's telling you need to go, and it's true. You've listened to it before. You've listened to it. It's given you impression that I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't do that. It's that deep thing, but you got to be quiet enough to hear it, to experience it, because man, that ego will take over, and it's very seductive. It overcorrects on things and tries to steer us away from things. But the fact is, real life involves a little bit of risk. It just does. You want to make a new friend, say hi to somebody, they could reject you. You could write a song that nobody likes, and that's a chance you got to take. You got to take risks. Whereas your ego say, no, don't do that. Remember when you were hurt? Remember, no, don't even leave the house. It's safer inside. Doesn't even want you to leave the house. That's that old good old ego. So it's just about calm. It's like, it's okay. I got this. It's okay. I'm letting my heart lead on this one, ego. You can just lie down, go to sleep for a bit. I'm going to be steered by my soul to fulfill my soul's purpose or essence. That's a beautiful
Yes.
thing.
Yes. And I would add to that too, there's a big, I watch a lot of YouTube videos, especially since I have a YouTube channel. So I'm constantly watching what other creators are
Oh
doing
yeah, me
and that
too.
sort of thing. And there's a creator, his name is Matt Carricker. I've followed him for years. He's got numerous YouTube channels. He's one of the biggest YouTubers out there. I mean, millions and millions of subscribers. Anyway, he's retiring from YouTube, and he was
Oh,
giving in his last video some advice to people. And it wasn't just about YouTube, it was just sort of general life advice. And basically, what he said was, whatever that thing is that you want to do, just start.
that's right.
That's it. It's as simple as that. Just
That's right.
start. So
That's right.
he was saying that in the context of like, he just started that channel. He thought it would be something goofy and like fun, and it turns out to be one of the most successful YouTubers of all time, right? So just start. So in the context of
Yeah.
this journey, right, we're all the stuff we're talking about development, and becoming, the best version of yourself and stepping into being a king and all that. Just start.
Not to mention, it makes you more attractive. When you are self-possessed, when you know what you want to do and you're pursuing it with a passion, nothing's more attractive than someone doing their passion. So if you're in a relationship and you're sort of stumbling around, figure out what that is. Lead in that direction. Lead yourself. It'll lead the relationship. If you're not in a relationship at this time, just work on that. and you'll attract. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
just the law of the universe.
All right, Scott, we are out of time, but I want to thank
All
you
right.
for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me. It was great. Great conversation.
All right, everybody, that's all the time I have for this episode, and I will see you next week. I hope you liked this episode of the Love Lab podcast. If you enjoy this show, subscribe, leave me a review, and share it with your friends. And for more free exclusive content, join me in the Passion Vault at kevinanthonycoaching.com/vault. That's kevinanthonycoaching.com/vault. Thanks for listening. And remember, as Celine used to say, you're amazing.